In this episode, I get to speak with Hugo Gomez, CEO of Abogados Now, a marketing firm that focuses on Spanish-speaking clientele. Marketing is essential for both a personal brand and professional brand. If you have followed me long enough, you know this topic is a topic I speak about in length. However, marketing for non-English clientele, now that is a whole different ballgame. Listen in for more. Before we get into this episode, we would like to thank our Season 4 sponsor, Affirm Investigative Solutions, your go-to litigation support company. Without them, we would not be able to keep upgrading and integrating new concepts to this growing podcast. If you would like to take your support further, feel free to hit the support button on our Let's Talk Paralegal website so we can continue providing quality and empowering content for you and all our listeners. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Let's Talk Paralegal podcast. Today I have Hugo Gomez, and we're going to talk about a topic maybe not a lot of you would actually even entertain unless you are either of Spanish descent, Spanish community involvement, a Spanish speaker, or know more than one language. So today we're going to talk about marketing in the Spanish community, how that looks like, the importance, and all the nuts and bolts, and what you can take away from today's episode. So Hugo, without further ado, can you tell a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. Thanks for having me on the program. My name's Hugo. I own a company called Abogados Now. Abogados is the Spanish word for attorney or lawyer. And what we do is we help attorneys advertise their practice in Spanish. We work across the country, and ultimately, more and more time has gone by to see that attorneys see an opportunity to advertise in different languages. So that's exactly what we do. We a lot of folks like to call us an agency. We like to call ourselves more of like a consultancy more than anything.
I love that. I love the consultancy aspect. A lot of people, and I'm pretty sure that's part of your little marketing thing, but I love that you're saying consulting because a lot of times, even when you bring on consultants, they don't even know what they're doing as far as the marketing aspect. Marketing is such a different element. And I can honestly say this, as we were talking about prior to the recording, the best thing I ever did was onboard a marketing strategist and really learn about my audience a little more, right? Because I may know them as a person, but I don't know them as buyers. I don't know them as, the conversion aspect of it. And I didn't understand the importance of my Spanish community because I am of Hispanic descent. And because my audience is very well aware of that, the importance of actually, kind of gearing to them, right? And catering to them. When I get messages completely in Spanish, I say, wow, I didn't realize my impact. I didn't realize that this was such a big portion of my audience, my community, just really my actual worlds, right? You don't realize how big it is and how much of a part it is because we're so used to speaking English in the States, right? Unless we go back to our home, which is primarily Spanish. But I didn't realize that until just recently. In January, I went to the Podfest, which is amazing. Shout out to the Podfest fam. But and there was a whole section about Latina podcasting, which inspired us to do bilingual episodes, which hopefully Hugo's going to join us on that. So that was a nice little segue. But nice little segue to our next thing is the importance of it, right? The importance of our community, of catering to them. Why should people invest in marketing to the Spanish community? What is so important about it? And really, what are the benefits of it, right? Because at the end of the day, everybody's looking at the dime, right? The last dollar. What am I going to get from my investment? So what's that look like?
I mean, generally speaking, it's easier than ever to market yourself online, which makes the market quite saturated for attorneys. So the number of cases generally doesn't really change all that much across certain practice areas year over year. But certainly the level of access to advertise is much easier. So in English, it's getting quite saturated. So if you're looking to grow your practice, you do need some competitive angle. For some attorneys, it's just a war chest with millions and millions of dollars for billboards and TV. Most attorneys don't have that. They need to be a little creative. We've seen attorneys that do really well on TikTok or on YouTube, or they're just really savvy at social media, or they're really good at just being at events. Those are their competitive edges. So what we find is the biggest competitive edge for an attorney, for most attorneys right now, is Spanish. It's Spanish advertising, and that's largely because 19.5% of the country is of Hispanic origin. So that's 1 out of 5. So almost 1 out of 5 people in the United States are Hispanic. Not all of them speak Spanish. Some of them are fully bilingual, English only, or Spanish dominant. But you need to cater to what is arguably the fastest growing market segment in the United States. It's not a niche. It's not a corner of the country. It is slowly becoming the majority. And it's something that every business should be considering at this point. It's how do you break out from a saturated market, find these new competitive angles? And if you're really looking to make an authentic footprint in the Hispanic community, that's your low-hanging fruit to finding more audience.
Yeah, I love it. And especially if you are Hispanic yourself or you are not, right? So investing in staff members that can attend to these clients, right? So tell us a little bit about how that dynamic kind of works as far as marketing, because you can market all day to the Spanish community, but if you can't attend to those leads, you're kind of stuck. So other than obviously making sure that your staff can actually attend to the new leads, what else do you think we can do in order to attend to this community?
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly why we consider ourselves a consultancy more than an agency. So we have nothing against agencies. Agencies do good work, but oftentimes agencies jump on a call with attorneys or professionals and they just want to sell them their portfolio of services. They run social media advertising or email marketing or Google advertising, and that's great. There's a time and a place for that. The reason that we call ourselves a consultancy is because we ask a ton of questions before we can even see if there's a mutual fit. And one of the leading questions that we ask is, how do you currently service Hispanic clients,
Mm.
namely those who speak Spanish? So we want to see that there is either a history of working with the Hispanic community or at least a serious vested interest in building it out. So those are two different paths. If someone already has bilingual staff, they presented to us that they have documentation, like their retainer agreements are in Spanish. They presented their marketing materials, their holiday magnets in Spanish. We know that they get it. They're already like more than halfway there. If an attorney is considering breaking out into this market, but they have very limited or non-existent bilingual staff, we will help them out with that through virtual assistants, and we'll build them sort of a 6, 12, and 18-month roadmap on how to really be bilingual friendly. Because the leads are useless, to your point, that they're totally useless if no one's managing intake in Spanish, if no one's handling that first interaction post retainer. What is the ongoing client relationship management like? All that has to be done exclusively in English and in Spanish for it to be fully bilingual friendly. So we do our best to get that information in those initial calls with attorneys to make sure that it's a proper fit. Like, you have to either already be doing it or you already have to have a deep awareness that you're really behind in it and you need help.
I'm interested now. What happens when they're aware that they're just not there? I'm sure you get all sorts of reactions where, well, I didn't know I was so far behind, or I didn't know all
Yeah.
this was, what it entailed. Because it's happened to me. So I'm just interested and curious to see how it works in your world.
Yeah, it's a few different scenarios. So generally speaking, if an attorney wants to start advertising in Spanish, but they see that it's sort of an uphill battle because for whatever reason, locally recruiting Hispanic talent is difficult, or they're just in a state where it isn't very dense in Hispanic populations. What they'll oftentimes do is they'll ask us for help in English because we're fully bilingual. We can certainly help an attorney out in English, and we'll build a book of business. We'll justify the need for our service through their additional revenues. They'll see the growth. And then at a certain point, it's usually at the 3 or 6 month point where they'll start to be able to reinvest in bilingual virtual assistants. They'll be able to reinvest in copywriters for the right legal documentation in Spanish, the marketing collateral, like Spanish videos, Spanish websites. Like they'll usually do it in a step process if they don't want to make that initial leap.
That's interesting. I like that. Any takeaways for the audience as far as I know you mentioned throughout the conversation about documents, having prepared documents, especially in the intake process, having the proper staff, right? Because Spanish is a language, but also there's different types of Spanish, right? We spoke about
Yeah.
this in our prior meeting about how the Caribbean Spanish is a lot different than the South American. And even within South America, the different dialects and words, and how the same word can mean five different things depending on where you're from originally and how you learned it, right? And then don't even get me started on the Spaniards, right? On the
Yeah.
Castellano and how that
Oh
works.
yeah.
So, tell me a little bit about that dynamic and how you can really assure that the process that you're putting in place, right, that you're consulting is really going to be, I guess, ever evolving, right, and
Sure.
ever growing and inclusive, most
Mhm.
importantly, for your actual clients.
Yeah, it needs to be local. So for instance, the way we market in Los Angeles is very different than the way we market to Hispanics in South Florida and New York. And it's exactly because of what you said. It's because just the Spanish, this isn't a Spanish or translation exercise. This is a cultural exercise, right?
I
And
like
so
that.
it's really huge that we don't see this as a shortcut. It's actually more work to do the work the right way in Spanish. So we try to localize it. We work with the averages, generally speaking, in Southern California, you're dealing largely with the cohort or consumers that are Mexican. It's largely Cuban in South Florida. In New York, Jersey, it's the biggest melting pot of Hispanics. So there isn't a general like one like a language, so to speak, that appeals to everyone. So we have to be generally conservative in speaking to El Salvadorians, Ecuadorians, Dominican Republicans, Puerto Ricans in New York, Jersey. It's a totally different beast out there. So yeah, we have to localize it. We have to understand first what is the general immigrant makeup of where you're trying to grow, and then build a marketing strategy just for that market. And so it's working with the averages. It's not perfect, but it generally yields the best results in working with the averages.
Okay. I like that. And so, any takeaways for the audience that they can actually take away out of this conversation? Just maybe some tips or tricks or just advice in general, because, like we said, this is a very dynamic topic.
Yeah.
And we gear to a community that even though we're considered minority, we're not really minority anymore. As you were
Mm-mm.
saying, we're climbing up the ladder. We're pretty much almost halfway there. And so understanding obviously the importance that we've already stressed throughout the conversation, what are some tips for our maybe people that are not Spanish, right? And what are some things that they can do in order to really be inclusive of this? Because as non-lawyers specifically, we deal with the clients day to day way
Right.
more than the attorneys and the executives. So give us a little bit of advice there.
Yeah. There's a lot of like actionable items that you can do today if you wanted to actively market in Spanish today. So there are two really interesting stats that are sort of the backbone of why we do what we do at Avogados Now. The first is a takeaway from the Pew Research Center that 94% of US Hispanics primarily use their mobile phones to access the internet. That's 94%. That's over indexing on the general market in the United States. So no matter how you advertise, make sure that if you run any ads starting today, that they're largely based for mobile devices. The second, and this is from Saber Responder, this is a think tank, a stats think tank for Hispanic, US Hispanic trends. They reported last year that over 90% of US Hispanics have a Facebook product on their phone. So that's Facebook, Instagram, and or WhatsApp. Meaning it's not just don't it's not just focusing on mobile, it's focusing on mobile ads that exist on the Facebook or the Meta ecosystem. If you just focus on that for the next year and you find the right ads in Spanish that are super localized, to the averages of the local Hispanic market, the local immigrant makeup, you've done a significant portion of the work that we do already. And what you're really doing at that point is just iterating on tests, trying out different video ads, trying out different image ads, trying out different language tactics on Meta, on mobile phones in Spanish. That's largely where the opportunity is. Google is increasingly becoming saturated in Spanish. A lot of firms are privy to how to do this now on search. However, I think the ones that adapt and innovate on social media, which is where the market truly lives, those are the ones that are really going to thrive. That's largely where we help attorneys out. It's these corners of the market that aren't saturated, but where there is significant business opportunity.
I love it. And you can also target your audience on these apps for those of you that are not aware of that. And Google Translate is not your friend. So please do not Google Translate. I had short story on why I'm in Memphis. And everybody that has known me and has followed me for however many years I've been on this podcast, 2 or 3 years, I don't even know right now, knows that I'm the biggest Google fan ever. I love it. My phone's Google Pixel, the Google Watch. I have G Suite for the company. Like, I'm all about Google, and Google is my friend. All my assistants are Google. Like, I
Yeah.
am all about Google. However, it's like any other software out there, crap in, crap out. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
understand that just because it's on Google doesn't mean it's true. And Google Translate does its best. However, it has glitches and it can misinterpret things. And if you don't know Spanish and you are just trusting the system, you are set for failure. I had this one translator. We're in the middle of translating our website to Spanish and having, a Spanish option on the website. I'm practicing what I'm preaching. And I hired this supposedly professional translator for the website. And
Yeah.
so I know Spanish, so I'm well aware, but as you said, there's different types of dialects, and my Spanish is not going to be the same, so I hired supposedly a professional. And when I came in here, I literally said this person used Google Translate. Like, you can literally tell, because
Oh
Google
yeah.
Translate, what it does, for those of you that don't know, it is a literal translation. So it
Mhm.
will literally translate word for word. However, it just like any other Latin language, everything has a male and a female what is it? Verb? I don't even
Like
know.
a
Like,
mode.
whatever.
Yeah.
What is it?
It's like a mode, like a
Yeah, like
modality.
a mode, right?
Yeah.
Like, instead of the car, it's like he car. Really, that's
Yeah.
really what it's gonna
Yeah.
say. El
Yeah.
carro, right? So Google Translate's not your friend, okay? I'm reading this junk. By the way, I did not pay them, because forget that. For that, I would have done it. And so, case in point, please do not use Google Translate. Try to find a real translator somewhere. And ask a friend. If we don't know
Yeah.
Spanish, ask a friend.
It's more work. That's we're not shy about telling attorneys that if you want to do Spanish marketing the right way, it is more work. You need to find the right person to write the correct copy in Spanish. And ultimately it needs to be culturally sound, localized. We saw this recently. This was about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. I was showing an attorney, I'll change his first name. Let's just call him Ronald Bell. He had Google Translate on his website. Ronald Bell had, and so I showed him that when I clicked translate, Ronald Bell turned into Ronaldo Campana. So it's like Ronald in Spanish and the literal word for bell in Spanish.
Mhm.
And I told him, like, you don't even exist in Spanish as a result of this Google technology.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just shows that this trillion-plus-dollar company hasn't figured this thing out.
I
So, our position is we're not going to wait for technology to fix this. I don't think it'll ever figure it
No,
out. It's
no.
too cultural, it's too nuanced.
Yeah.
So, by default, everything that we do has to be done by humans, And so I think it's just one of many examples of, like the one you mentioned. There's so many examples like that where legal professionals are sort of embarrassing themselves when they find these shortcuts.
Yeah.
and it could
And
actually
stop with
hurt
the
your
say habla
business.
español ads. Okay. Nobody
Oh
wants,
no,
no, like, let's not
nobody
do that.
wants.
Okay. That's so 90s. It's very discerning for the public. Just don't do it. Just say hablamos español, bienvenido, something like that. Like, be welcoming. Just be yourself in a different language. That's really
Oh
what you
yeah,
need to do, right? Like,
yeah,
I
totally.
it's like, I understandable. You are the brand. I mean, Hugo and I were just having this conversation that it does, your logo can be pretty, your Google reviews can be 5 star, whatever it is. But if they come to you, I use this example all the time about like a barbershop or a nail salon, right? How
Mhm.
do you choose those? Are you driving by? It looks aesthetic, you like the ambiance, you feel welcomed, or
Right,
do you look at the reviews and you see all the 5 star reviews? Well, how about if the reviews and the ambiance don't match the customer service? That's really
right,
what you're looking at, right? You get there,
right.
you're waiting for an hour, nobody's attending to you, or worse, you get bad service, and then you're paying for it, right? At the end of the day, you can't just walk out. So understanding the nuances as you would as a customer, like, put yourself in your client situation, right? How would you want to be treated in your own language if that's what you're trying to do? And not to leave out other Latins or other cultures out there. Same thing with Portuguese, right? I'm learning Portuguese now, so I'm learning a lot more about how the big differences between the Portuguese from Portugal and the Portuguese from Brazil, right? Two
Yeah.
different monsters. Same thing as Spanish. It can mean completely different things. Same with Creole and French. A lot of people
Hmm.
think it's the same language. It's not. It's
Right,
really not. It's two different dialects. It's a completely different. Even in France, they have different. The Parisians from Paris are different from like the south or north of France.
right.
All these things, right? So it doesn't matter what language you guys are trying to focus on. Just learning the language is great. Understanding the culture is what's needed in order to
Totally.
successfully market your actual firm.
Yeah,
So that,
there's
that was
so
my takeaway.
yeah, there are so many. I mean, one example that I showcase a lot, and this is something that we employ a lot with attorneys, is when we show an ad in English versus what is typically shown in Spanish on a headline, you could see the stark differences, and it's very simple. Like in English, what we found is that English speaking clients, the general market, if you will, largely values um, settlement values or recent settlement totals. That's what we found in the English community.
Show me the
That
money.
show me the money. Exactly. So the headline will often say Bob Smith, best injury attorney in Houston with over 500 million in settlements. That'll be the leading indicator. In
Mm.
in Spanish, what we'll put is Bob Smith, the best personal injury attorney in Houston, um, fully bilingual staff will help you regardless of your documentation status. Uno
Ah,
sin papeles. That's in the
mm,
headline in Spanish.
yeah,
Those two totally different like
yeah.
marketing angles, two different cultural angles. What
Mm,
we're promising in English is very different than what we're promising in Spanish. And it's not because of what we want, it's because of what the market wants. So
mm,
it's a small, it can come down to just copy, just language. And it's those small changes that make a world of a difference in how many phone calls you'll get from your website and how many people will connect to your social media pages, how many people will even watch your YouTube videos. It's pretty astounding that it's really small. The changes are fairly small, but they do move the needle.
wow, I love that. I love it. I feel because Hispanics are more emotional. We're all about the emotion, right? We're all about, are you really going to care for me, or are you just going to treat me like a number kind of person? But yeah, I love that. Oh wow, I love this conversation. I can literally talk to you all day because I'm like not a newbie, but I'm like ingrained in the whole marketing and how to market your
Yeah.
company and all that good stuff. And I talk a lot about being your brands, but it's different when it comes to like logistics, right? So I love these types of conversations, especially when it's geared to my community, because we're all in the same community, regardless of what country we're from. And thank you for your time, because I know it's very valuable, and I know you probably charge an arm and a leg an hour. So I appreciate, you carving out a little time for us here at the Let's Talk Paralegal podcast. And I know this is not our last conversation, but I'll see you soon. We'll talk soon, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was awesome talking to you.
Awesome. Well, that's all for today. Until justice is served, everyone. Have a good one. Bye.